Welcome back to our video lecture. In this lecture, we will talk about Burp Suite proxy. How we can use Burp Suite as proxy. So you can see over here. Here is one tab in Burp Suite called as Proxy tab. So Proxy tab is mainly used for intercepting our requests. It will intercept all the requests which is being sent by our browser like Firefox, Chrome and etc. So Proxy tab have subtabs which you can see over here like intercept, history and options. So with the help of intercept tab we can check out whether our intercept is on or off. If intercept is on, which means we will intercept our request. If intercept is off, then our request will not go through the Burp Suite. It will just go directly to the web server. Then there is one more tab called HTTP history. HTTP history tab is just keep a record of all the requests which is being intercepted by our burp. There is one request of WebSocket history and there is one more tab of options. So at options tab we can actually configure our Burp Suite that on which particular IP and on which port our Burp Suite will listen for all the requests. In the next lecture we will see how to configure proxy and intercept request. If you have any doubts on this Burp Suite proxy tab, feel free to ask. Okay, that's it in this video. Thanks for watching and see you in next lecture. Welcome to this video lecture. We will see how to configure proxy in intercept request. Now let's open up this IP address in browser so you can see over here the BWAP. Here you can see a lots of valuable web applications. Now as I told you previous, by using Burp Suite proxy tab we can actually intercept our HTTP requests and we can figure out that what kind of request it is, what kind of suitable methods it's using and what kind of parameters are being passed along with that request. First thing we have to do is we first have to click on Proxy tab. You can see inside the Proxy tab here, Intercept tab, HTTP request history, WebSockets history and options. By default, you can see that intercept is on, means we will intercept our HTTP request. If you just want to make this intercept off, so simply just click over it and you can see the intercept is off. Which particular IP our Burp Suite is actually listening, we first have to click on options. You can see over here proxy listeners, which means Burp Suite is currently listening on IP address 127.0.0.1. The port is 8080, which ensures that our Burp Suite is up and it's listening on localhost IP address and port is 8080. Okay, so that our request which is being sent by our browser will first go through the Burp Suite. Whether we want to send that request to the server or we just simply want to drop that request. Let's make the intercept on now. Let's try to configure browser network settings. So I recommend you use Mozilla Firefox because it's best for the security testing. You have to click over here and here is one options menu. Open up. Right now you can see that we are at Journal tab, and if you just go Network Proxy, so by default our Mozilla Firefox works by your system proxy settings, but what we have to do is we have to click on manual proxy configuration and here we have to write down a localhost IP address, that is 127.0.0.1, and port is 8080. Please don't forget to check this check button. Just checking this button it make Burp Suite to intercept HTTP requests. Now click on OK. Let's open up BWAP Home. You can see over here. Now we are actually intercepting our request. You can see over here, this is how your HTTP request looks like. And here you can see the user agent. You can see cookie, and if you want to see the parameters, just click over here. You can see the parameters which are being sent by this request, and parameters are actually present inside our cookie. You can see the header and you can see the hex value. Now let's click on forward. Then you can see that our Burp valuable web application is open. Refresh the page. Just for example, if you don't want to open up website or you just simply want to drop that request, you just have to click on drop. So you can see over here that at the background it's saying error, the request was dropped by user. This is how we can actually intercept HTTP requests by using Burp Suite proxy tab. But the thing is to be noticed that by default configuration of Burp Suite is to only intercept HTTP traffic. So if like you want to intercept the HTTP request, so some website which actually running on HTTPS, in that case we have to install Burp Suite SSL certificate because we have to trust Burp Suite. In this SSL certificate import lecture, I have explained how to import SSL certificate in browser. That's it in this video lecture. See you in next class. Bye bye.
Welcome back. In this video lecture, we will see how to import Burp CS certificate. By default, when you browse an HTTPS website via Burp, the proxy generates an SSL certificate for each host, signed by its own certificate authority, CA certificate. This CA certificate is generated the first time Burp Suite is run and stored locally. To use Burp Suite proxy most effectively with HTTPS websites, you will need to install Burp's CA certificate as a trusted root in your browser. If you have not already done so, configure your browser to use Burp Suite as its proxy, and configure Burp's proxy listener to generate CA signed per host certificates. This is the default setting. Let's open up Burp Suite. In proxy intercept is on. Now open any SSL certificate website like google.com. Here you can see that google.com SSL web response as connection is not secure. Now open up http://burp in your browser and click the CA certificate link to download and save your Burp CA certificate. In Firefox, open the Firefox menu, click on Preferences, go to the Advanced Settings, click on Certificates, click Import. Select the Burp CA certificate file that you have previously saved and click Open. In the dialog box that pops up, check the box Trust this CA to identify websites and click OK. Close all dialogues and restart Firefox. If everything has worked, You should now be able to visit any HTTPS URL via Burp without any security warnings. Okay, thank you for watching this video. See you in next lecture. Welcome to our video lecture. In this video, we will discuss how to perform manual text-based audits using Burp Suite Repeater. When performing a web application pen testing, there will often be times that manual testing is required to exploit a given vulnerability. Capturing every response in the proxy, manipulating it, and then forwarding it can become very time-consuming. Burp Suite's repeater feature simplifies this by allowing consistent manipulation and submission of single requests without having to regenerate the traffic in the browser each time. Burp Suite Repeater simply works by providing a text-based interface to the web. The repeater can allow a user to interact with remote web services by directly manipulating requests rather than interacting with a web browser. This can be useful when testing cases for which the actual HTML output is more critical than the way it is rendered in the browser. Let's open up browser, click on XSS Reflected. Now turn on My Intercept proxy on. Search ABC any random string. To use Burp Suite Repeater, a request needs to be sent to it from either an Android capture via an intercept or from the proxy history. The easiest way to start working with Repeater is to select the request you want to work on within another Burp tool. Right-click on the request and use the Send to Repeater option to the context menu. By shortcut key Ctrl+R, it also send to Repeater tool. This will create a new request tab in the repeater and automatically populate the target details and request message editor with the relevant details. You can modify and issue the request as required. Here you can see that Repeater UI lets you work on multiple different requests simultaneously, each in its own tab. When you send requests to Repeater, each one is opened in its own numbered tab. Using Request HTTP Message Editor, you can edit the request and reissue it over and over. An HTTP message editor showing the response that was received from the last issued request. When your request is ready to send, click the Go button to send it to the server. The response is displayed when this is received, together with the response length and a timer in milliseconds. You can use the usual HTTP message editor function to help analyze the request and response messages and carry out further actions. A request is made for the user to provide a name and the server returns the provided input in the HTML response. To test for the possibility of cross-site scripting, we should first inject a series of commonly used characters in such an attack. After sending in the series of characters, we can see that all of the characters were returned in the HTML content and none were escaped. This is very strong indication that function is vulnerable to cross-site scripting. We can enter the standard token request for script alert high enclosing script tag. Now let's see the returning HTML content. You can see that the opening script closing tags have been included in the response. This can be confirmed by issuing the request in a browser. Now let's evaluate the response in the client browser by right-clicking on the request and then select Request in Browser. This will generate a URL that can be used to reissue the request in a browser that is actively connected to Burp Proxy. We can copy the URL provided manually or by clicking on the copy button. This URL can be pasted into the browser and the request will be issued in the browser. Assuming the cross-site scripting attack was successful,
the client-side JavaScript code will be rendered in the browser. But we are not getting the alert message because I'm using Chrome. It has default protection against reflective XSS attacks. Okay, that's all about Burp Repeater tool. Thank you and see you in next lecture. Welcome to our video lecture. We are continuing our lecture series on Burp Suite tools. Assume that when you are working with web application traffic, you will frequently notice content that is encoded for obfuscation or functionality reasons. Burp Suite Decoder allows request and response content to be decoded or encoded as needed. Burp Suite Decoder provides a platform for both encoding and decoding content when interacting with a web application. This tool is extremely useful because various types of encoding are frequently used across the web for handling and obfuscation reasons. Additionally, the Smart Decode tool examines any given input for null patterns or signatures in order to determine the type of encoding that has been applied to the content and then decodes it. In this lecture, we will discuss how to encode and decode content using Burp Suite Decoder tool. Let's encode and decode using Burp Suite Decoder. In this lab demonstration, I am using BWAP web application. Let's open up BWAP. Choose the bug as base64 encoding and submit. Here you can see that secret cookie. Now highlight the desired string, right click on it and then select Send to Decoder. As you see in the decoder, value of the cookie parameter is sent to the decoder. By clicking on the Smart Decode button, now select the encoding base 64 and decodes it in the field below where the encoded text was originally entered. You can see that text is decoded as any BUS3M %2F. Here you can see that last three characters as URL encoder, so select %2F and choose URL option. Here you can see it is decoded. If Burp Suite is unable to determine the type of encoding used, manual decoding can be performed for multiple different types of encoding to include URL, HTML, base64, ASCII hex, and so on. A decoder can also be used to encode strings. Okay, that's all about decoder. Thanks for watching. Have a nice day. See you in next lecture. Welcome to our video lecture. Now we are continuing Burp Suite tools. We will discuss how to identify and evaluate varied server responses using Burp Suite Comparer. When performing a web application assessment, it is often important to be able to easily identify variations in HTTP requests or responses. The comparer feature simplifies this process by providing a graphical overview of variation. Burp Suite Comparer works by analyzing any two sources of content for differences. These differences are identified as content that has been modified, deleted, or added. Quickly isolating variations in content can be effective in determining the distinct effects that particular actions have upon the behavior of a web application. Now, we know that comparer tools is used for comparing two responses. But the question arises at why we use this tool. Here I am discussing 4 uses. Let's assume that when looking for username enumeration conditions, you can compare responses to failed logins using valid and invalid usernames, looking for subtle differences in responses. When an intruder attack has resulted in some very large responses with different lengths than the base response, you can compare this to quickly see where the differences lie. When comparing the sitemaps or proxy history entries generated by different types of users, you can compare pairs of similar requests to see where the differences lie and that give rise to different application behavior. When testing for blind SQL injection bugs using Boolean condition injection and other similar tests, you can compare two responses to see whether injecting different conditions has resulted in a relevant difference in responses. To use Burp Suite to perform web application analysis against a target, you will need to have a remote system that is running on one or more web applications. This lab provided an instance of Metasploit Table 2 is used to perform this task. Metasploit Table 2 has several pre-installed vulnerable web applications running on the TCP port 80. Okay, let's open up DVWA web application brute force vulnerabilities. Let's open up Burp Suite, turn on intercept. Tap random password for capturing post fields in a proxy. Hit enter. Here you can see that post fields are captured. In previous Burp Suite intruder to brute force the login for DVWA. Let's send the intruder to position. One payload in particular generated a longer response than all the others. In payload option, I am typing password and pass at 123. Hit start attack button. Here you can see that 3 payloads brute force response. Evaluate the variations in response. Right click on the event and then click on send to comparer. The same thing should be done for one of the control examples. After sending each event to comparer, we can evaluate them by selecting the comparer tab at the top of the screen. Ensure that one of the previous responses is selected for item 1 and the other is selected for item 2. In the bottom right corner of the screen, this is an option to choose compare words or compare bytes. In this particular case, select the words option. By doing this, you can see that some of the content modified in the response reveals that the login was successful. Any content that has been modified, deleted or added is highlighted from one response to the next and make it very easy to visually compare the two responses. Okay, that's all about Burp Suite Comparer tool. Thanks for watching and see you in next class. Bye bye. Welcome back to our video lecture. Web application sessions are often maintained by session ID tokens that consist of random or pseudo-random values. Because of this, randomness is absolutely critical to the security of these applications. In this recipe, we will see how to collect generated values and test them for randomness using Burp Suite Sequencer. Burp Suite Sequencer performs a number of different mathematical evaluations against a sample of pseudo-random numbers in an attempt to determine the sources of entropy from when they were generated. Live capture can be used to generate sample values by issuing crafted requests that will result in new values being assigned. This is often done by removing an existing cookie's value from a request so that the response provides a new session token in the form of a new setCookie response header. Let's open our browser. Open Burp Suite and intercept is on. Let's refresh the page. Here you can see that proxy is captured the request from the browser. Now I'm going to send this request to repeater tool and right click and send to repeater. Repeater tool we have already learned. In the params tab, we can add or remove cookies, post data and the URL. Now I will remove all the cookies except security. Hit go button to send the repeater. Here you can see that in the response editor, get the response from the server. If a response containing the set cookies header value and other pseudo random number value to be tested, so we need to be sent to sequencer. Burp will automatically populate the cookie drop-down menu with all the cookie values set in the response. Alternatively, you can use the custom location field and then the configure button to designate any location in the response for testing. After defining the value to be tested, click on the Start Live Capture button. This will start submitting a large number of requests to acquire additional values for the defined parameter. Burp will issue a large number of requests with the PHP SESSID value stripped from the request. This will cause the server to generate a new session token for each request. By doing this, we can acquire a sample of values that can be subjected to FIPS testing. This will consist of series of tests that will evaluate the entropy associated with the generated pseudo-random numbers. All of these tests can be represented in a graphical format that is easy to understand. For a highly accurate and true FIPS test, a total of 20,000 values, but an analysis can be performed with as few as 100 values. In addition to performing a live capture, the manual load tab can be used to upload or paste a list of values for testing. That's all about sequencer. If you have confused with any tool, please feel free to ask. In the OWASP Top 10 Vulnerability Lectures, we will discuss how they are used in pen testing or bug bounty program. Thank you. See you in the next class. Welcome to our video lecture. We will discuss how to use the supplemental engagement tools in Burp Suite to gather or organize information on a target. Burp Suite also has a number of tools that can be used for basic information gathering and target proofing. These tools are called engagement tools. Burp Suite engagement tools work in a variety of ways depending on the tool being used. Many of engagement tools perform searches and examine the already received responses for a particular type of content. The Discover Content tool provides the functionality of discovering new web content by brute forcing file and directory names by cycling through defined word lists. Engagement tools can be accessed by right-clicking on any object in the Sitemap tab and then scrolling down to the expansion menu and selecting the desired tool. By default, the selected engagement tool will recursively target the object selected to include all files and directories within. Now let's discuss one by one. Search tool. This tool can use to search for terms, phrases or regular expressions. It will return any HTTP requests or responses that include the queried term. For each entry returned, the queried term will be highlighted in either the request or response. Find comments. This tool searches through all JavaScript, HTML and other sources of code throughout the specified web content and locates all the comments. These comments can also be exported for later review. This can be particularly helpful at times as some developers will often leave sensitive information in the comments of code that they have written. Find scripts. This tool will identify all the client and server side scripts within the web content. find references. This tool will pass through all HTML content and identify other referenced content. Analyze target. This tool will identify all dynamic content, static content, and parameters within the specified web content. This can be particularly useful to organize resting of web applications that have a lot of parameters or dynamic content. Discover content. This tool can be used to brute force directories and file names by cycling through a word list and defined list of file extensions. Schedule task. This tool allows the user to define time and dates to start and stop various tasks within Burp Suite. Simulate manual testing. This tool presents an excellent way to appear as though you are performing a manual analysis on a web application when you have actually stepped away for coffee and donuts. These are absolutely no practical function for this tool beyond just bamboozling the boss. That's about Burp Suite engagement tools. Thank you and see you in next class.